Is the low in for the day on a Friday? 58.50. We talk about the highs or lows for the week. I think that's the only question. The other question is, what's the PCE data going to be? Folks, I can only say one thing. It's a Freaky Friday on PreMarket Prep.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. This is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
Okay, in the green, 13 and a half, 14 handles at 58.90. We took out the low yesterday. If you stayed up all night and you did the undercut and back above the previous day's low, you're doing okay. The buck, 5,900. That's our big number. No technical level there, just a psychological level. The buck up 9 cents, 107.27. That has a little bit of a rally. TLT, another good day, bumping up against 92, up 25 cents, 91.56. Crude down 60 cents after a nice gain yesterday at 74.68. GLD drifting away from that all-time high. That is down a $1.14 at 263.79. Silver, well, this might be the last time we mention SLV. That's flat, 28.43. And Bitcoin, that dipped under 80K, down just about 3K here at 80,935. Let's bring on the stars of the show, Dennis and Christian. What a day yesterday. Unbelievable. And we could talk about maybe a culprit in the room, but Dennis, you have a broader theme that you want to share with everybody.
Well, it's the same theme that's been here. Obviously, NVIDIA was ugly for the market yesterday, and we can talk, the media will find, the sales growth or some fundamental reason behind that report. Are you trying to tell me that it took the market 12 hours to figure out that the NVIDIA report wasn't that good? Are you trying to tell me that the market is that inefficient? It's profit-taking mode, folks. That's what it is. NVIDIA was up. NVIDIA was up all night. The whole night, 135, trading all morning. Opens, high tick, and tanks. Snowflake. We talked about this one. Gave it to you guys. 187. We're like, I'd sell it right now because stocks are in profit-taking mode. Rewind the tape to yesterday. Boom. Gives back 14 points. Closes on the low. They'll say, the report wasn't that great. No, the report was that great. It's in profit-taking mode. So there's a theme here. If you're in the high flyer tech, they're taking profits. That theme can change suddenly. So stay tuned. Don't stop listening to the show because we will change our minds here. This is a dynamic show that changes its minds for new information. We won't be bearish Snowflake NVIDIA forever. But right now, they're in sell mode on these stocks. Christian, what are your thoughts here? Is this all fundamental or is this just, I think it's a lot of technicals.
It's both. I mean, it's, I was looking at NVIDIA as you talk about, for instance, the analyst ratings. There's so analysts have 68 buy ratings on NVIDIA, 8 holds and no sells. So
holy crap.
Yeah, so
that's what I have to say.
And contrast that with, like, let's say Apple, for example. Apple has 35 buys, 17 holds, and 6 sells. So you got the street leaning all to one side, and we're in a situation too where it is a risk-off environment. Look at what Bitcoin is doing again this morning. It's selling off. So it's the main thing I think that we covered yesterday, and I know this is confusing because people see good numbers, but it's a combination of things. It's risk off in this market and people running for the exits. And it's also NVIDIA, the growth is slowing. And it's not to say that their guidance was bad or their numbers are great. It's just the fact that people are looking at the trajectory of the growth, which we talked a little bit about this on the show yesterday. And that's why the trade that I had talked about yesterday, the Iron Condor, I was out of that short put spread in 6 minutes. I saw that NVIDIA was up and I was like, boom, let me get out of that. And then I can work on getting out of the short call spread, which I didn't think that NVIDIA was going to hold those gains like that. I wouldn't say that it was going to sell off that much. And I just want to go back to one thing too. We talked about the implied move of Nvidia, which is about 10%, and I think it ended up going down about 8%. So it's funny that sometimes these things initially that's not there, and it was not much of a movement to begin with, but it almost got to that implied move yesterday.
And keep that in mind. I mean, that implied move is applicable until the end of today, because we usually talk the Friday close options when we're pricing these things. So sometimes, those implied moves do hold, and then you get a release on Monday. So people, great question. Dennis, give me the future. It's risk off until it's not. I'd love to give you the future. I will tell you, price has to tell us when the future is here, though. So right now, they're in sell mode. But stay tuned, like I said, because we're getting to some supports here. Maybe we could throw this to our technical analyst, Joel Elconin, to find us some levels here. Because I'll tell you, as much as the media wants a bear market because that'll get the ratings up and they can talk, I still don't think we're in a bear market whatsoever. There are so many stocks that are going up in this environment. We are just in wicked rotation from high PE to low PE. We've talked about this. This is the year of the laggard. The laggard trade continues. It started January 2nd, and it has continued here. But there are a lot of names here that had really good days yesterday. Look at Bristol Myers. Look at Merck. It's come back a long ways. I mean, these are boring stocks, but the market likes boring. When you start seeing, Palantir and all these stocks falling 10% a day, the market's like, where am I safe? Where did they go hide? Look at Berkshire Hathaway once again, new all-time highs. There's a huge value. That's a portfolio of value stocks. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Warren. I'm safe there. I don't know if you are safe there. I am not advocating to go buy all these value stocks when they've all run like this. But what I'll say is you can clearly see the rotation. So those will start to sell off when the tech stocks start getting bought again. So just keep an eye. There'll be trades and they lag. They're not geniuses out there. I mean, Microsoft breaking down, key reversal yesterday, new low. Well, new lows, I don't know. If you're a trader, you got to go. We always say that. So I don't love that chart on Microsoft here either. I know it's powerhouse ticker time here right now, but there was key reversals in everything yesterday, Joel. So, I mean, I think, I don't know. Like Brian Shannon maybe puts it the best. We've had Brian on a couple times, obviously, recently, and we love Brian Shannon. And he's like, buy strength after the dip. Don't try to catch the falling knife. In this case, I think I agree with him. I think, we're getting hit so hard here. We need to see some stabilization. And then maybe, we start thinking about buying the dip. But I'm not against buying the dip here, too, on some stocks. Just do your homework. Look at your levels. Joel, I'm throwing to you. Give us some levels.
You know what? I'm a level guy, but like in this kind of thing, I mean, you gotta stop going down. You gotta put a double bottom in. You gotta do something. I mean, am I happy that they're 30 handles off the low at 59, 58, 50? I don't have a level there. I don't have a daily low there. I don't have a Fibonacci retracement. I don't have an RSI, a stochastic. I'm just giving me what the market gives me. I mean, 59.73, that was yesterday's low. We're still above it. If you want to try and pick a bottom, and I know we got PCE coming out at 8:30, they got to defend that pre-market low. Or blast through it, by 4 or 5 points, hit some sell stops and come back up. If you want to go basis the dailies, though, I mean, that's that's where I get a majority of my data from. And basis the dailies, you got a low at 58.42.50. So, that's only 16 handles. And then after that, 58.09. So 58.40, 5800. I mean, those are the two levels that, hey, if I was running a short in there, would I try and cover? Is it the greatest place to pick along yet? Maybe not. I mean, other things too. It's this historically, and Christian, you've talked about this. Ryan Dietrich talked about seasonality does not favor the end of February, right? Also, end of the month. People are like, I want to get paid. I'm going to take my profits at the end of the month. So a lot of different factors going on right now. And I haven't even mentioned tariffs. I haven't even mentioned that.
That's the boogeyman. Is the tariff talk. And I think it's a main reason the market may get spooked here again. But one thing to consider is SPY has held up incredibly well because it's more diversified than we think, actually. We always say it's 40% those big guns. But the other stocks are holding it up. Like, look, today even, for instance, you got NVIDIA trading down, Tesla trading down. You've got ARC way down. You have all the Momo names way down again, yet SPY is up 20 handles. And that's just simply because it's more diversified than we give it credit for. There's a lot of other value names that are lower in the pool there, keeping it elevated. So the S&P hardly looks like it's even off at all. I mean, what are we off from the all-time high here on the SPY, Joel? 613.
I mean, nothing. I mean, look at this chart, folks. Look at this chart. Look at
Nothing.
this. Look at this thing.
Where's the correction? There's no correction here, folks. Not on this. So, I mean, if you're coming in and saying, oh man, these stocks are so cheap here now, I don't know. Like, there is stocks that are cheap out there. Christian, are you starting to see like some rotation? Are you seeing some other momentum and looking to play momentum in some other names here right now? Because you're a Momo trader.
Yep, I think, well, there's a couple points here, and it's tough to chase the value stocks right now. You know, VTV has been looking pretty good, which is the value ETF, although that succumbed at the end because it seemed like, you know, everything yesterday was getting sold yesterday. But you had a little bit of a chance. Like, you know, if you really, I think right now it's more of a buy the dip mentality that's going on in value stocks. You know, PGR is one name that there's a couple names that I continue to look at. PGR, AbbVie.
Can you share your charts, Christian?
Oh yeah, sure. But I think like it's tough to like. I don't want to chase value stocks. To your point a few minutes ago. Sorry, share my screen.
We know how the value, we know eventually they'll rotate back into growth because this market's so hungry for growth.
Yeah, so I think really what you want to do is like what I have kind of come back to is making sure that I own like somewhat of a diversified portfolio. Names like I think Progressive is a quality name in insurance.
Sure.
I think, you know, AbbVie had good earnings. So but do I want to chase value right now and start going into, you know, say that I want to start like diving into AbbVie right here after it's made these moves? No, I don't. And you know, you're going to get pullbacks. Like also like, you know, something else that I've been watching that's pulling back a little bit is gold. Right. And I have an alert on gold, and gold is, you know, pressing into the 20-day moving average. Like, you know, this is something that I'm going to be paying attention to too. I would rather be patient rather than chase the value names or something like growth. So I'm watching this pullback in growth. We're going to get gold and pullback in growth too. But you know, I think with the PCE number at 830, that could shake things up too.
It can change everything on a dime. So just remember, all these value names that people are flocking into, they'll flock out of them just as quickly if the growth names start to rally. They're completely inverse correlated right now. We're not in this market where they're in the sell everything mode. We have not seen that market, I feel like, in years. We saw it maybe on DeepSeek Day. We see it for a day maybe, but we never see this market sustain where they're in full-on sell mode. Sell it all. I just can't hold stocks anymore. It's not like that. You feel that way if you're stuck with a bunch of Momo names right now. It is not that way. And this is why we stay diversified. You know, I look at my own long-term portfolio, and, you know, you look at these Momo names going up 50 or 100%. You're like, why didn't I own all Momo names? This is why, folks. This is why I don't own all Momo names, because some of the other stocks picking up the slack. I mean, I had my Amgen, you know, and I talked about it, and it's definitely a value name. It's had a hell of a year. It started the year at 260. I sold it now. I'm out at 317. I just sold it because I'm like, you know what? The value names, and you've got 320 major resistance on this thing as well. So you're coming back into where the price has memory. But, you know, this could continue higher. When the days that, you know, they're selling the growth names, they buy stocks like this. So just keep in mind, this market, if you're a regular trader, it's all about rotation and understanding those rotations. Nothing else matters right now because the macro theme is driving the bus. PCE today is going to drive the bus. We get a light number, they'll start flocking into all those small caps again where they were selling them all yesterday. I mean, IWM is breaking down. The Tom Lee rally looks not to be happening at all. I bought a little bit more small caps in the long-term portfolio, a little bit, you know, not going crazy and going all in here. But, you know, at a certain point in time, you got to say, okay, you know, maybe I'm going to start buying a little bit. I don't think it's the end of the small caps forever and ever. Maybe it is. Maybe AI is going to put a lot of these companies out of business, but maybe AI is going to help a lot of these companies too. So I think you can start nibbling in certain areas, but I wouldn't chase the value names, to Christian's point. And I don't want to be too early on some of these nosebleed growth names because they don't have any valuation support whatsoever. I mean, where do you say, oh, Palantir is a good deal? At 40 times sales, 50 times sales? Where do you come in? The value investor is down there at $20. So, I mean, I don't think it's going there. I think the momentum will come back. But when momentum leaves and there's no valuation support, this is how you get these serious corrections.
Well,
for
to
those
put things in
stocks?
perspective too, like the corrections from time to time. I mean, we're in the thick of things right now, right? And we've seen a very sharp correction from the highs to the lows. I mean, very, very quickly, this has happened. But to have like perspective about this is that we actually, as investors, we want corrections. We want to have stocks kind of return to a little bit more of normalcy. I had talked about this over the weekend. There was a chart out by Bloomberg. I don't have it in front of me right this second, but was talking about how the US market is very overvalued in relation to a lot of international, and hence we've seen an international stock rally. But for stocks to kind of come in a little bit and hit the reset button for more of a long-term view, this is exactly what you want as an investor. You want to have these dips 5-10%. And I agree with Mr. Brian Shannon about like, hey, you got to wait for these stocks to kind of turn back up again, right? You don't want to be catching falling knives. But at the end of the day, usually putting money to work after a correction has worked really well in this market. Now, I can't tell you, none of us have a crystal ball about how much farther we're going to fall. And, I was just bringing up the SPY chart and IWM, which both don't look good. I don't like the breaking of the 50-day moving average. I don't like the
Not
breaking
great.
here. So it's not good. And I think like I kind of just stepped away from a couple of my positions that I was kind of adding on the dip, and I threw in the towel. Like luckily, like I threw in the towel like in the afternoon. Like I had a Robinhood position too, which was up yesterday nicely, and I'm like I'm like, and
Yeah.
I had a downside alert on it. And once it hit the downside alert, I'm like I'm out. I'm like
What's your
I'm
downside alert? Explain that one, like what the alert was, just for our listeners.
Yeah, it's basically just having a I brought up like my stop price to say,
Yeah.
okay, the stock is up for the day. If it starts to give back those gains and reverse, I'm not going to stay in it for that because I caught a bounce in it. And I was adding, I was kind of very too stubborn, and you can't be stubborn in this environment. The stock started to break down. I like one of my favorite trades is to buy dips and name the names that have had strong earnings, but this thing kept on dipping. And I think
Hmm.
my last purchase was in here. And so once I got the stock to kind of, I got close to my break even. I couldn't, I was like, I'm not going to get the break even on it. I'm like, this is close enough. I lost about like $1 on the trade. And I was like, that's close enough because I was probably down about $4 in the trade. So I'm like, that's it. That's good enough. And I'm out in the trade. And I don't want to be stubborn. I don't want to think about my cost basis. I want to think about the road ahead and say, okay, where is this stock going? And at this point, you really don't want to be holding on to too many problem areas in your portfolio. So I liquidated that. I also had some Brinker on, which is another one that I bought on a dip after strong earnings, and the thing just kept on dipping. So
Yeah.
it started to kind of move back up. I had a downside alert on it. Once it hit the downside alert, I'm like, I'm not going to be stubborn with this position. I'm out, and I need to kind of hit the reset button. Now, I didn't think that we were going to sell off like we did yesterday, but the stock to watch towards the end of the day is Nvidia. Now, of course, Nvidia had earnings yesterday, but that's the way that this market has been moving. It's
Hmm.
still somewhat linked in to the AI trade. So when Nvidia, starts to head south for the day in the afternoon, it drags the whole market
Everything.
with it. Yeah.
Everything.
Hey guys, can I switch gears here for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because one thing I like to really keep an eye on is like the housing market, right? Because that's tied to so many different things, right? Interest rates, construction, a lot of jobs and everything. And I just pulled up rocket companies here, and they just happened to report. So they had a catalyst and they had a good quarter. They beat 4 cents versus 3 cents, and adjusted sales are okay. And it popped to 14.20. I mean, that's a nice move. I mean, it did sell off the last couple days, but I mean, there's an area of support. Buyers were stepping up here. This is a stock. I mean, I'm a little biased, because we're from the Motor Cities, Motor City company. But if a stock like this can hold its gains today, then I think that just like the world isn't falling
Can
apart.
anything hold its gains? I don't.
Well,
That's what I'm
no,
concerned
that's you've
about
been
too.
pointing out, Dennis. That's why everything has been faded. So that's a big move. 83 cents. And it popped over 14 bucks. It already found some sellers. I mean, 14 is a good number, right? Because you peaked there in December. So way above its 50-day moving average. So the pops have been sold. But, Dennis, what category would you put this stock in?
TLT.
Yep.
This moves exactly. Bring up the TL. So look at this long-term chart. Blow it up. I know we can't do an over. We should learn how to do overlays here. But the TLT, you got to put the TLT chart up with Rocket because the recent, up move coincides perfectly with the TLT. This is a TLT play, a pure TLT play because they're so interest rate sensitive. Look at the charts. Virtually identical. Virtually identical. TLT,
nice.
Rocket.
My cousin Vinny.
You knew where I got that from. My cousin Vinny. But RKT, TLT move together. I trade RKT. You got to know your relationships. Like my own trading, why I'm consistent on a monthly basis. Nobody's ever consistent on a daily basis. We all have bad days. But on a monthly basis, why I'm consistent, consistently make money. It's not because, I'm a great, predictor of future price. It's not because, I just got a crystal ball and, I just make good calls. It's because I understand the relationships and nobody cares to talk about that. How often do you see somebody come on CNBC and say, oh, but talk about the relationship. Talk about, how this is related to other things. They all want to talk a chart. They all want to talk something else. Relationships drive everything. They always have. They always will. So you've got to understand, hey, Rocket, that is very interest rate sensitive. That is going to be a TLT play.
Okay. All right. Do we care about really any other earnings today, or do we want to?
Dell reported last night. We care about it because, again, as predicted on Twitter, I said if these stocks rally, and there was a list of them, I could bring them up that I put out there, they are likely to get sold. Dell had a good report, rallied last night, was sitting up for over an hour. It gave you an hour to sell this thing last night. DELL. 263 versus 253, 23.9 bets. So even on a sales miss, even on a little bit of a light guide, the stock traded higher last night and higher significantly. We got up to like 113, 114 last night. It sat up there for a while. What happens? Eventually, people are like, I got to raise some money. Man, I'm getting killed. I need to raise some money. High flyers, Dell, they're raising some money, selling the rip. And we'll look, lo and behold here, gives it all back and then some. And now you're looking at trade down 7%. The media say, what a terrible report. Wasn't terrible for 2 hours, though. Wasn't terrible for 2 hours. We're in profit-taking mode, folks. Sell the rip right now is working better than buy the dip ever did. Write that down right now. Sell the rip is working better than buy the dip ever did. It's like blindly selling the rip is just working on everything, just like Snowflake. Fantastic report. Sell the rip. Comes right back in. Day later. Dell comes right back in. Hour later. It's a theme, folks. Look for those themes.
Dennis, you're absolutely right. And we were looking at this stock after hours because it started to go up, they announced a buyback plan, a dividend, and it was like, what else could they throw at the stock? Like they needed like a kitchen sink to try to get the stock to stay green. And I was like, it's not going to stay green. But Can I just change gears here for just a second?
Yep.
And I want to talk about something that we haven't heard about in a while. It used to be for I don't know, this is going back about 3-6 months ago. Everybody had this term that they were talking about called hard landing versus soft landing. You don't hear about that anymore. And we know that inflation has been up decently. We have an inflation report, and it's the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation that's coming out in 5 minutes, which is the PCE. It's not the PCE. I want to say PCE deflator, but they changed the name. It's now called the PCE price index. So I just wanted to preview that really quick for you. They're looking for month over month 0.3%. Year over year, they're looking for 2.5. The core PCE, they're looking for 0.3, which still indicates like that inflation is definitely present. But the question is, I think that what you're starting to see with some of the Trump procedures, and not trying to get political, but they're really starting, we started to see the weekly jobless claims tick up a little bit, right? There's going to be jobs that are being cut. And I think that not that I want to talk about hard landing versus soft landing, but I find it funny that nobody's talking about that anymore. And you're going to have to, like, I think if they continue to kind of cut government jobs, which sounds like where the administration is headed, that is going to bring down, I do believe that that's going to bring down inflation to some extent. Now, of course, you have to look at the other side of tariffs and so forth. But if you start to kind of cut jobs and you bring down growth, what is inevitably going to happen is you're going to bring down inflation, but more so on a harder way to do it versus like that soft landing. So I find it interesting that nobody's talking about that, but I don't know if this some of the data that comes out in these reports is a bit lagging. I don't know if you're going to see it, that inflation is going to start to move down, but I think in the next month or two, you're going to start to see inflation move down because people are getting worried about whether or not they're going to have a job and about the overall growth. What do you guys think about that?
I have
I
some
think
definite thoughts here,
go.
and I mean, I don't know. Is it Google laying off some people today? There's been a lot
They
of
said in their
layoffs.
cloud division
What about the
yesterday.
government? You're
Yeah,
cutting jobs everywhere. There goes 6,000 IRS agents. There goes,
yeah,
like all that is going to hit the markets as well. You
yes.
cannot just start, cutting and slashing jobs everywhere, and we're going to pay off the debt, like just by,
In a
government
week,
efficiency.
in a week.
Doge is, pushing us, the other direction as well. I mean, you're costing people a lot of jobs. Those people are a core part of the economy. So I think you can't just, take it like it's all good. No, there's people that actually work. 6,000 IRS agents are gone. Something to think about.
Remember we had Blue on a couple weeks ago, and what
What did he say?
Blue was talking about tariffs, which is our inflationary, cutting jobs, which is recessionary, right? And less government spending, which is recessionary. So, I don't know what his probability was at the time, but he did, Travis, man, he did use the R word. He did. I mean, it's good because it's good as cutting inflation, but is it going to be offset by the tariffs? And I think this all boils down to one thing. There's a hell of a lot of unknowns right now. And what does
A
the
million.
market not like the most?
This what?
Uncertainty.
Yeah,
Uncertainty.
true.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, but there is some knowns too, and this is why, I took that trade on EWC that I talked about yesterday, like he's talking tariffs, he's talking tough. Canada is in rough shape already here. And you got Canadian stocks, half of them sitting near all-time highs.
Dennis, I don't think
understand
you
it at
shared
all.
that. I don't think you shared. I think
Well, I've
that.
talked about the tariffs quite a bit here. I
Okay.
mean, EWC has no business being 2% off the all-time high. No, if you go back further. So again, if I say all-time high, then you got to go back. No, I think it is. It's actually
Well, that
didn't was
is.
there in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
Like sitting there, just hanging out, 41s. Oh, la, tariffs. Oh, tariff talk. Oh, who cares? La. Buy and invest in Canada. La. Just stupid. Well, I started paying attention a little bit yesterday. If tariffs come in to Canada, that EWC is going to get hammered. So I took a page out of Christian Fromhertz book, and I actually put this trade on about the 41 puts going out to the March expiration, which pushes me past that March 5th date. So I think it's March 21 or March 22. So I bought the 41 puts and I sold the 40 puts. I put that trade on for 14 cents. So it gives me upside of 86 cents. That is a nice 5-to-1 risk reward.
Yep.
Is that about what that math does? 5-to-1. So if the tariffs do come in, and if EWC obviously closes on the third Friday of March below 40, I make 86 cents, risking 14 cents. I love that trade.
Great
I think it's about 30 cents now, but you could put that on yesterday all day long for I lagged it a bit, so I cheated a little bit on it because I felt like we were going to sell off.
Yeah.
I know
Yep,
he's
we
gone,
were on.
so we can get into
All
this
right, Dennis.
ladder.
1 minute. 1 minute. Dennis.
Yeah, I'm going wide.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Thank you, chat. I went wide. We're going to talk PC here right now, but there's opportunities here, folks, that people are sleeping on. That's what I want to say.
Okay. Christian, I'm going to cover the price action. I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to scream because people email me and tell them I was screaming and broadcasting. I'm not going to do that. I'll be calm, cool, collected on this number.
You can scream. It's Friday.
No, I'm
Come on.
not. I'm not in
Ah,
the pit. I don't need to
ooh.
scream anymore.
So yes, it's point 0.3 is what they're looking for. Here
Oh, a
comes the
nothing
numbers.
muffin out of this?
No, it's not out yet.
Not out
Oh,
yet. No, no.
Not out
okay.
yet. It's late.
Algo jumpers are nervous, Dennis.
It's popping.
Comes
It's light.
out in line with expectations. 0.3
Oh,
versus
it's in line.
0.3. Month over month, the year over year, 2.5 versus 2.5. Core PCE price index also in line with expectations on the screws. Guys,
Oh.
0.3 versus 0.3. Weren't, weren't.
Our own Christian Fromhertz beats Rick Santelli in those numbers. You were like 5 seconds ahead of him there. So that's our network. We're faster than CNBC. Yeah, so a nothing burger really, but we popped up. So it wasn't hot. So that's like, okay, relief. Woo! Wasn't hot. Wasn't not either though. Like that hot or not site, it was in the middle.
Right.
So we don't know how to like do this. So, or I don't think that site exists anymore, but probably can't have a site like that anymore with this world. We're popping a bet. Well, I don't know if anything holds from a rally perspective here. So hard to get all excited and say, yeah, I'm coming in and buying stocks off this. IWM, TLT, or lie detector test. Let's look at TLT.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Where was TLT before it?
Yeah,
That's a good-
hold on.
Bring it up. I don't know where it was before the number. We popped up pretty good on this, I think.
Yeah, let me see here.
A little bit.
Yeah, it was smidgen. You know what else? Another thing I like to
Smidgen?
do. Let me go to the pre-market chart here. I like to see what the 8:30 tick was. The 8:30 closing price, guys. I never pay that close attention to the 1 minute chart. But at 8:30 we were at 91.61. Now we're 91.39. Spoos are popping. I'll tell you, if you're looking to short into this thing, you better have a level because I don't have anything because we came down so hard yesterday. I don't know if you want to base it on a 15-minute chart or whatever,
You're right.
but we just slammed. And if you're long and you're trying to protect, then maybe just move your stop up and say, okay, I want to get out at the best possible price, but who the no hell's what it is. So still haven't taken out the pre-market high. So right now that's like a half-star resistance, 5,900. It's also a nice round number. So PCE in line. So
I'm going to jump off in a minute. I know that we have a guest coming up in a couple minutes, but I want to also talk about towards the end of the show what we think for these Fridays. Fridays in 2025 have not been happy Fridays. So I think it's important to kind of talk about too, like what we could potentially see for the day, as well as possibly next week too, because we're in a new month, and that really poor seasonality might be behind us.
end of the
too,
month,
so.
yeah.
Well,
Yep.
what a fantastic point you're making here, Christian. I know you have to go early here today, but what a fantastic point is like they've been nervous going into the weekend because we don't know what Trump's going to say over the weekend. It gives them 2 days to talk. And we're coming into close to that tariff deadline next week too. So I think it is possible you get some nervous Nellies here going into the weekend. So I would not be the least bit surprised if this rally fades and we end up going red here. So I think I would be if you bought yesterday and you're up here. I think I'd be taking the short-term profits into this. Again, we don't know where, to Joel's point, let's go 590, and we'd still be pretty much in the bear train here. So, I mean, you could rally another 30 handles and it still doesn't look great on the charts. So it's hard to tell where it stops here. We can't give you a point where it's going to stop this rally. But I think by the end of the day, I do believe we could get back. Again, this Fed speak, this commentary. I mean, you always have to be ready.
Here's one other question for you guys too. At what point does Trump start to look over his shoulder at the market and say, hey, the market, this is causing damage to my presidency. I got to pump the brakes. And maybe he pauses these tariffs and says, what I read too is like he wants something done on fentanyl. Maybe these two can kind of get together. That would be very nice before the weekend for him to say to pump the brakes. But at some point he's gonna cave and look at if the market continues to go lower, he's gonna back off. That's my prediction.
I 100% agree with you here too. And this is why it's hard to get on the full bear train, because if it goes full and the market starts crashing, Trump will do something to try to prop the market back up. And he has that power as well. So Christian, you're just leaving us with two fantastic points.
He's coming back. Christian is
coming
back.
Why would pay him the big buck? Okay, he's going to be back. Okay, great. So Christian is going to come back. He's got to pop up for a little bit.
Okay. We got a special guest coming on here. All right, let's go with it. All right, there he is. Frank Holmes, CEO, CIO of U.S. Funds. Frank, we wanted to bring you on a volatile day. Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, there's volatility everywhere. And one place there's a lot of volatility here is Bitcoin. And we know about Hive, and we wanted to talk to you specifically about Hive today. We haven't really dug into the company, really into the details, into the roots. So just like, how did it get started? Like, what makes you guys different? And, where does the revenue come from?
Thanks, Joel. I'm a fund manager, and I'm known for the smart beta 2.0 quad approach to creating unique portfolios, which we've spoken before about Jets. And in that journey after creating Jets, I tried to launch a Bitcoin ETF in 2017. And I realized it wasn't going to happen. Thank God I didn't hold my breath, because I would have been disappeared because it didn't come out till last year, Bitcoin ETF. But in that journey, it was why wouldn't they allow it to go? And that was because the concerns on KYC and AML, anti-money laundering laws. But if you're a Bitcoin miner, you create the coin. You do not have these issues. Every 10 minutes, you have this opportunity to create a new Bitcoin by validating the network. So I said, I'm going to go and put up as a co-founder and seed the first public company to go in the space in the realm of the crypto, and Hive was the darling story. And we had institutions like Fidelity give us 100 million, and other small cap institutions, and it took off. And then you saw later on the riots came out following on that footpath. So that's what I'm pretty proud of. And we found that there was a lot of gold investors that were reluctant to go on crypto exchanges to buy Bitcoin. So Hive became the proxy, and we started the hodler. We're the first to hodl our Bitcoin and our Ethereum back when it was Ethereum on our balance sheet. And we also had a strategy of being green only. And we went to Sweden, we went to Iceland, then we went to New Brunswick on the border of Maine, and in Quebec. So that's really been sort of the growth. The challenge has been getting secure, safe, inexpensive green energy. And that's why this past year, we announced going to Paraguay, a country in Latin America that loves America. Unlike many of the other countries, it is really aligned with America. So now we're going to increase our footprint by 400%. We'll go from doing 120 million revenue to 500 million in revenue. So that's what Hive is as a crypto mining company. And in that journey, we bought NVIDIA chips, and those NVIDIA chips were to mine Ethereum. Ethereum disappeared, and we found that we had all these chips, and we repurposed them for AI business, which is now growing for us internally with high cash flow.
Frank, just expand on this energy, because obviously, it's smart, obviously, for you to get over and get into other countries where the energy is cheaper. But with Bitcoin pricing coming down recently, obviously, that's going to impact your margins, I would think. How do you stay, profitable if Bitcoin, or how do you stay, obviously making revenue and stuff if the Bitcoin price continues to fall? Is this just, that eventually the price comes back?
It's a great question, Dennis. So one of the things in the strategy of Hive is to be much more like a gold royalty company. And royalty companies and SaaS companies, they have much higher revenue per employee. So we would look at our peers who are buying all of Bitfarms operations, and not all of them, but most of them in Paraguay. Well, they have 200 employees and we have 20. So our revenue last year was about 6 million in revenue per employee. NVIDIA is 3.5 million, Apple's 2.5 million. So we do generate a lot of revenue per employee. What does that do? When Bitcoin falls like it does, we have this margin, this cushion of margin to be able to go through it without having a huge payroll. We just adapt to it very quickly and easily. And that's one reason why we're the only crypto mining company I'm aware of that had operating profits going through every downdraft since we've been public.
Can you just explain to newer listeners here that aren't familiar with the crypto mining industry, like how does it work? Like I remember you've given an analogy, you've come on the show for years. I remember you gave this like drop puck, analogy before. I'd love to hear that again because I still, I'm a smart guy, but trying to wrap my head around, like everybody jumping, and trying to get in there and get these, free Bitcoins there. It's kind of mind-boggling to me. So I'd like you to explain just how the actual mining process works.
In simple terms for listeners, is the Bitcoin network. And remember that it was we the people created for the people. There's no one central organization. There's no board of directors that created Bitcoin or the validation mechanism. And what's so brilliant about the algorithm behind it is that every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin to be mined halves. So it becomes less and less Bitcoin supply, and the total supply is capped at 21 million coins. So that idea of having limited supply and mass adoption fits into a famous mathematical model called Metcalfe's law. Most people are aware of Moore's law, and Moore's law says that the processing power basically doubles every couple of years, and that's what we recognize. What does the Bitcoin network, what was the structure? The most incredible algorithm, Ray Dalio calls it, it's like a Mozart symphony. Well, in that mechanism to earn new coins, every 10 minutes, there's competition to validate the network. And by validating that Bitcoin is clean, going through 64 digits to make sure no one's tampered with it, that is how you earn new Bitcoin. So every 10 minutes, you want to say as a metaphor, it's a jump ball or it's a drop puck. It's how high you can jump or how fast you can get your stick on that puck. And you validate that transaction, you earn new Bitcoin. The issue is every 4 years, there's less Bitcoin. A year ago this time, there was 900 Bitcoin a day. Every day, there was an opportunity to earn 900 Bitcoin. Now it's 450. So the difficulty of mining gets more and more difficult. So you need better machines.
So let's jump into competition here because it sounds very competitive here. How do you stay ahead of your competition? And who are your competitors? Like we know a few of these publicly traded miners here. Is it all the public ones? Is there other ones? Is the whole world competing for, this drop puck or ball? Like, so how do you stay ahead of the competition? And who are those competitors?
I think one is you have to be buying new machines that have faster at getting that stick on the puck. You need people that can quickly get the puck,
Connor McDavid.
And the only way to do that is to have ASIC chips, which are more energy efficient, to be able to capture it. So that's what you focus on, upgrading your machinery all the time. The biggest difficulty, I would say, the headwind we've had, which you've overcome, is getting green energy. We've always been focused on green energy. And because of that, we created the first ASIC chip with Intel. And Intel came to us because we're green only. Another part of that equation is NVIDIA. Because we're green only, NVIDIA felt that, okay, they were always anti-Bitcoin. And I understand why, but for us, they knew that our GPU chip acquisition was to mine Ethereum and then pivot to AI. So we were able to become a platinum buyer because we're green only.
So you're bringing AI into this now.
Yes, and that AI business is only going to grow. And I was thrilled trying to understand Amazon announced today a quantum chip, qubit. So we're going to see Amazon all of a sudden having a new chip. And these chips have become really expensive. They're going to be $3,000 a chip. For the new Blackwell at NVIDIA, they're $30,000, $35,000 a chip.
Okay, Frank, let's get to the numbers a little bit. You had a 29% jump in mining revenues in the last quarter. That's what people like to see, the fundamentals. You always like to look at the competition. How are you stacking up against your competitors as of late?
Immensely so, immensely. And I would share with you that we have the lowest G&A to mine a Bitcoin, that we have the smallest market cap on a per Bitcoin mined. on metrics. We always rank in the 1, 2. Most of the time is number 1 most efficient use of energy in the world. We function, I'm very proud of the team, in 9 time zones, in 5 different languages, and we are still the most efficient miner. So that's something that's really important in dealing with these downdrafts like we recently had. But I share with you also that this recent downdraft is not as bad as other ones, even though it shocks people of what took place. And I think it's less in a downdraft only because of the growth in the ETF space that was approved last year. The growth in ETF adoption will only continue to grow.
So basically you're saying like this crypto pie, as this continues to grow, obviously, it's good business for you guys and for the miners as well, correct? Is that what you're saying? Like,
yes,
you
and it will
predict
grow.
this to
and our
continue to grow?
competition, but our competition has issued much more shares, so dilution is much greater, Joel. If you take a look at the metrics of how fast, they're bigger than us now. Marathon and CleanSpark are bigger in total revenue because they have more hashing power, but we've been just very focused on having sustainable energy. And now I think that we'll go from 6, what they call 6 exahash to 25. And then we have other ambitions here to digest this over the next 6 months that will go to 50 exahash. So we do have plans in place and we're excited. But what is announced and our critical path is we're going to take this company with about 22 direct employees managing this. We're going to take it from 120 million to 500 million in revenue.
Frank, one thing that really hindered Bitcoin early on was regulation, right? And you had the big debacle with can't even remember, Bankman-Fried or whatever.
Yeah.
The regulatory environment, it seemed to be a little bit better under the Trump administration, but the price action really hasn't dictated. It did initially. But just talk about regulatory effects over the next 4 years and beyond.
I think the biggest is going to happen in the next 2 years. I think Trump has a 2-year pass. If he doesn't ignite inflation with his tariffs, if he can maintain job growth, then he will maintain control of the Senate and Congress. So he has a 2-year run, the sprint, to make all these changes. In that realm, we have moved the head office from Canada into Texas. There's a reason for that, because it's now a safe jurisdiction from regulatory overreach. We've witnessed this, Joel, all around the world. And it comes from the Bank of International Settlements, and big banks do not like the success of Bitcoin, where you can move money 24/7 at very low cost. Banks charge a lot of money and they have control of your assets. So the whole idea of having this decentralized asset is important, and the innovation. We now have a government agency that supports that. And I think that that's really significant, that we felt safer of moving our head office. There's another rational reason for that. If you don't have your head office in America, even if you're listed on NASDAQ, you do not qualify for a lot of indexes. And they're very substantial pools of capital. To give you an idea, last year, Palantir moved from New York Stock Exchange to NASDAQ to get into the QQQ, and their stock jumped 80%. So you're recognizing that. So now all of a sudden, we would qualify for revenue and earnings and market cap to go into something like a Russell 2000. And going into that, we saw what happened to other mining companies, that they surged 80% also because it went into all of a sudden to qualify. The largest shareholders of the other crypto mining companies are predominantly tech or small cap, mid cap indexes that are driving those flows into those stock prices. So we're now going to be positioned, and that's great for the shareholders because it lowers their cost of capital.
Frank, question from the chat here, and I'm curious as well because I'm not in the mining business. Mike wants to know, what's the rough average cost for you to mine a Bitcoin? Like, what is, like, if the Bitcoin's at 87,000 or 100,000, and it's moving around, do you know what the average cost? Like, it's obviously a moving target, probably, right? Correct?
It is a moving target, but it's probably more like about $60,000
Okay.
for us to mine a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And we showed, I'm very proud of the team, even with the halving last year. The halving, we still had last quarter's results were spectacular in growth in revenue and earnings. And Joel, if you look at a multiple for data centers, they trade at 20 times EBITDA. So if our EBITDA is at 100 million, then our stock price, that's why many of the analysts came up with a re-rating last 2 weeks of $10 to $11 a share because of our embedded growth in EBITDA. But our embedded, if it was just not a Bitcoin data center business, it was just data center business, the valuation would be up 4-fold, 5-fold from where it is today. So I believe that it's a great value proposition, which will go through that transformation.
Are there contingency plans, Frank, if Bitcoin was to fall under $60,000? Do you just stop mining, or I always wonder that, because we've had Bitcoin corrections before, where we saw it go from 60,000 to 13,000, but the miners still stayed in business. And I was like, well, how does all that work? I don't understand, the mechanics, how you basically, tough out the falls in price. Because obviously the price goes up, it's great for you, but what do you do if the price, doesn't cooperate?
Well, the two things to go with that, Dennis, is one is what they call the network and the network difficulty. And you can see the network difficulty drop, which means there's more profit margin. The net difficulty rising means less profit margin unless Bitcoin is trading higher. What drives the network is the cost of electricity and the efficiency of your machines. So when it falls like that, what happens is a lot of miners all of a sudden stop mining. The difficulty then starts to come down. They can't be profitable, so they stop mining unless they have the most efficient machines. And it's a sort of a balancing recalibration that happens with the Bitcoin price. So it's always important, and something we've done on a regular basis, buy the most efficient machines on a monthly basis and replace older ones unless the electricity gets cheaper. Now, if you have 2-cent electricity, you can work and mine off of old machinery, which are not energy as efficient. If you don't, then you have a drop like this and you have older machines and your cost for electricity is 5 cents, you have to stop mining. Otherwise, you're going bankrupt. And that's how it recalibrates on a regular basis.
All right, Frank, you have your crystal ball with you? I have the Bitcoin weekly chart up here. This is the futures, because I like to follow the futures because they predict the future. You filled the gap here in the weekly. You're coming into the 50-day moving average. Do you have a feel for Bitcoin here at this level?
Yeah, I think that we like to look, and you guys are so technical, and I love listening to y'all, is a 20-day rate of change and a 60-day rate of change. And we call it sigma moves. And what we look at is from a trading point of view, is it down 1 sigma or 2 sigmas? Right now, over 20 trading days, and Bitcoin is down 1.6 sigma. That means there's about 85% probability over the next 20 days to rise. A 60-day volatility, Bitcoin is down about 0.6. So the mathematical assurance over 60 trading days of going back to the mean is more than 60% probability in the next 60 days. Bitcoin will be trading higher. Over 20 trading days, there's pushing a 90% probability Bitcoin will be trading higher. And I think it gets back to the $100,000 range. It's still very sentiment driven. Someone hacked, all of a sudden all the bids get canceled, stop losses get hit, and we get this capitulation. It's cathartic. It cleans out the weak people and brings in the strong that run a strong business model to deal with this volatility. I think that this is what we're living through. And fortunately, it's nothing that's this with regulatory pronouncements. It has to do with a hack that the North Koreans are beating their chest. Now they're doing a disastrous job in our reconnaissance in Ukraine. The soldiers are wounded and losing face. But when it comes to hacking, the cybersecurity network has got to continue to protect against these hackers.
Frank,
what about these? One more second. What
Okay.
about these predictions from like Kathy Wood of a Bitcoin $1 million, or Michael Saylor $2 million? Are these possible? Like, is it possible that Bitcoin could go up like 15 or 30 fold from here? I'm just wondering, because these just sound like numbers. People just throwing out numbers to me.
It's a great question, Dennis, because at the beginning I never would say it could go to $1 million. And so what you realize that your traders that are listening to your program, if they go buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin hodl ETF, for class example,
Sure.
or they go directly and buy $1,000 of Bitcoin, what they're really buying are Satoshis. And one Bitcoin is worth 100 million Satoshis. So based on $80,000, $85,000 for a Bitcoin, they're getting a little over 1 million Satoshis for every $1,000. It's like buying a penny stock. But you can break a Bitcoin down to these units. And what's interesting, as the adoption takes place and smaller investors come in to trade, they're going to be buying Satoshis. Well, Satoshi right now is 0.00067 cents or something. What we found with new technology moving on a JPEG, they call it, I can take a photo of this meeting we're having right now and put it on a JPEG on the Bitcoin network. And special days, special numbers, such as the inauguration of Trump for some people, or the day of your daughter's birthday, and you're walking down South Beach and you've got this photograph, you can attach that to a JPEG and put it on this Bitcoin. They're called ordinals. Well, those ordinals don't trade. They need to have these Satoshis to do the trade. And those Satoshis are special numbers, and we have been offered up to $10 for a Satoshi. And you scratch your head and you say, at 1 penny, a Satoshi at 1 penny makes Bitcoin worth 1 million. But we've been offered for some at $10. So what happens with this adoption process and more people trade and come in to buy only $1,000 or $10,000 of Bitcoin, they're really buying Satoshis, that adoption is going to drive higher prices. And at 1 penny a Satoshi, Bitcoin is at $1 million. So now I'm so comfortable to say I've been offered $10 for some of my Satoshis, my special magical number Satoshis. And because they're limited in supply, that drives it higher. Does that help?
Supply and demand. That was a great explanation. Frank Holmes, CIO, CEO of US Funds. And you made Dennis happy because you brought in hockey. You brought in the hockey analogy. Frank, we got to let you go. You know, you're a busy man. We're going to get you back on. There's so many other things that you could talk about. Gold Jets.
Dave Bullish is my daughter. She left it here.
Okay.
That's awesome.
All right. Frank Holmes joining
the
us
bull Bitcoin.
on Pre-Market Prep. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Have a great weekend, y'all.
All right. Christian's hiding in the background. And Christian, let's go back
Bitcoin
to
thoughts. Christian, we want to get Bitcoin predictions from Christian here now too.
Okay, so who's a gap expert? Like Phil, I'm talking about like fill the gap type of stuff. Joel, is that you? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, they fill the gap. I mean, and this is the future. So, you know, the 24-hour market, there's never a close, right? Because I guess there is a close. But if you are strictly a gap trader, you're coming into old resistance, new support on the futures, 80K, you filled the gap. I mean, hey, if you want to, if you think it's going back to 100K from here, you could take a shot at 80K. You got to give yourself some room. You know that. And maybe there will be a retracement of this move. I just don't know if it's going to be from 110,000 to 80,000. That's a 30-point move. That would take you back up to 95. There's a risk you get. That is as most expert as I could get on gaps.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, move to this market here. We're kind of just sitting here. They wanted to rally a little bit, and then they just didn't have the gas to rally the market here. Obviously, S&P's giving back some of the gains from the PC number here. IWM sitting here in the red. If the PC was really, a good number for the markets, you'd think the small caps would respond. They're not responding this morning. They're actually sitting in the red. Again, if I'm looking at, the 200 stocks that I look at, and I have them all grouped by sectors here, I see banks stronger. I see consumer staples ripping higher. I see a lot of tech stocks, major Momo ones trading lower, ARKK down 1.45%. It's telling me right now, this market, even though the S&Ps are up 12 points here this morning, it's telling me it's a risk-off open here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, look, this is the consumer staples. Take a look. They're buying the dip in consumer staples. So that's probably not the best indicator for the day. Here's insurance stock too. So that's a great point. What stocks are they buying the dip in? Because everything did kind of tank yesterday. You know, even those value stocks that have been doing really well held up. I'm kind of looking at something like a 3M today. 3M has been very strong. It's a cheap industrial. Again, cheap.
Value.
Yeah, value type industrial. But I just want to say one thing before, as we're coming upon the 9 o'clock hour, right? Regardless, like of today and how bad these 2025 Fridays have been, have a longer term perspective. I do think ultimately, as I had said previously, was that corrections are good. You just have to be patient with these corrections and wait for the buyers to the institutional buyers to come back in. But I do think that you're going to get some good buying opportunities. So don't get down. Yesterday was not a particularly good day for me yesterday, and I was frustrated. I'm still frustrated at this week and so forth, but I think you have to have a bigger perspective of just like 1 or 2 weeks and take it with a grain of salt that you're going to get good buying opportunities from that. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, and again, even to Frank's points here, and we can talk Bitcoin for a second. I mean, where are we? Like 77,000 or something now? I mean, if you do believe that, crypto is real, and you do believe that this administration is going to take a positive crypto stance, that's the next 4 years, folks. So I think at a certain point in time, you're probably buying Bitcoin. You're probably saying, hey, this is the pullback. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for. I mean, I can remember, and I'm not saying it's going to 60,000, but I can remember that major resistance of 60,000. That's going to be support all of a sudden too. And I love seeing Christian's charts here as well. As we cut through, down here, was that the 200 we're looking at? 200-day moving average?
We're right at the 200-day moving
average. We're kissing it, like kissing the 200-day moving average. So, I mean, maybe it's a logical place to bounce. You can take a shot. You can take a shot on anything as long as you have an out. But I think at this point in time, if you're coming in here and saying, that's it, the Bitcoin story is over, I'm out, I mean, you're kind of doing it backwards. Where were you a month ago? Or where were you 2 months ago? I mean, when everybody's 100,000, we all the hats on, and it's like, oh, we're going straight to 200,000. Stocks, crypto, they don't go straight up. They have significant corrections. These often are opportunities. You buy good companies, reasonable valuations. We can't do that with Bitcoin, so we have to just go with the supply and demand. But if you think this administration is going to be pro-Bitcoin, it's probably good for Bitcoin over the next 4 years. Probably eventually going to be buyers here. So maybe you're nibbling. Maybe you're doing some nibbling here.
Okay. All right, Christian, I know you got to hop. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes today because we had some symbols. I'm going to do some extended ticker time. Dennis, I know you got probably 1,000 positions on.
I'm okay. I can stick with you for Dennis, a couple minutes there.
I know you hate when I quiz you.
Oh, gosh. I never liked quizzes.
Okay.
Have a great weekend.
This is a layup.
But I never liked them.
Christian, you might not be able to get one. This is a layup for you, Dennis. You've heard a term Frank used before. Who used that term? And I'll give you the term.
What term?
Sigma.
Well, Fari was all over.
Yes.
Fari Hamzy was all over Sigma channels. He's the Sigma master there.
There. We'll have to dig up
Christian, you know Fari? Oh, Christian's
he just hopped off. Yeah.
He's like, I don't know Fari. Now, Fari, so when we launched back in 2013, Fari was one of our regular guests. He was our weekly guest, and Fari is a character. I mean, you have characters out there. Fari is an awesome character, and he does great at trading too. Like, he's fun. Sometimes you get lost, though. You get in these Sigma channels and be like, whoa, man, this is going over my head, because he will get technical. But love Fari. For years, we've been friends. He's down there in Naples with Captain Tico. We've always loved Fari. It's been a while, so I'm excited to have Fari back on.
Yeah, you won't be sorry if you listen to Fari.
That was pretty. That's what I used to say on the segments, and I was like, that's pretty weak, Joel. You gotta come with something better.
Dennis, someone noticed.
Is Fari coming tomorrow?
No. I'm gonna dig him up. Okay. Someone asked about Microsoft. Oh man, and they're looking to buy Microsoft. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta get rid of this
What's
because
happened?
someone asked about Microsoft for
Oh
ticker
yeah,
time. We're
go
doing
go.
ticker time. I mean, this is tough. I mean, wait, if you're a short-term trader, I mean, wait for a double bottom or something. I'd say the next daily low comes in at the August low at 385.58. So if you're taking a stab here, the thing that concerns me about Microsoft is it's just been an underperformer since mid-December. The market went all the way back up to all-time highs, and this didn't even sniff it. So if you're taking a poke here, then there's August low you can lean on. If you're a little bit more patient of an investor, I would wait for this August low here at, I think it was 385.58. Triple D, any comments on this one? Or do we
New
want to?
lows, you got to go. So if you're trading this technically, key reversal day, I would say I don't want to be long Microsoft. I've said this for a while with Microsoft. The valuation is as nosebleed as Microsoft has been. As much as Apple is in nosebleed territory, so is Microsoft. As the price comes in, it starts to become eventually more attractive, though. So just, giving you that forward PE, where Apple's forward PE just comparatively here has come, my stuff's not working here. Anyways, Apple forward PE sitting around 32 times, which is as expensive as Apple has ever been. Microsoft forward PE is around 30 times, which is pretty much as expensive as Microsoft has been in years. In the tech bubble of 2000, Microsoft, I believe, traded 47 times earnings. So, I mean, you're not as expensive as you've ever been, but as expensive as you've been pretty much since the tech bubble. So if you think, Microsoft's just dirt cheap here, it's not, folks. Microsoft's traded down to 18 times earnings here. You get market multiples here. When you really get into a market correction, I don't know if that's happening, but if you get into a significant correction here, that's where you get serious valuation support on some of these companies, the mid 20s. So I think, the technical breakdown at this point in time, and, the run it's been on, it was $100 4 years ago. Now it's $400 from, 1 trillion to 3 trillion or whatever the hell Microsoft is now. I think at this point in time, I mean, we're pausing, again, the AI story is not going away. All these stocks probably eventually go higher, but just know what you're paying. You're paying more than, people were paying, just even a couple of years ago.
How about Amazon coming in here? Big day yesterday.
Yeah.
Not bad relative strength, yesterday.
Yeah.
Not coming anywhere near that low at 204.16 or 204.16. It's green today so far. Filled some gaps from earnings. Nice pullback here. This might be one where you want to let it simmer a little bit and maybe try and buy it on strength instead of weakness, instead of trying to pick a bottom. But if you are in that kind of mode, after 204.16, you got to look out for that psychological number of 200. Dennis, any thoughts on
Yeah, we'll go
Amazon?
valuation here as well. So Amazon 31 times. They're like, well, Dennis, that's just as expensive as Microsoft and Apple. So why would you pay 31 times for Amazon over Microsoft and Apple? And I'll tell you, because Amazon has just been such a growth engine over the years. When we're looking relative to itself, Apple obviously has grown because they've just done a lot of buybacks. Amazon hasn't done that road. They've grown because they've actually grown revenues. So it's a little bit of a different story. There still is, more growth here. And Amazon, relative to itself, is about as cheap as it's ever been. Amazon's never traded at 30 times earnings. It was trading 100 times earnings for a long time. And obviously they grew into that valuation. So I don't know. I look at Amazon at 30 times and Microsoft at 30 times and Apple at 32 times. And I think I'd rather own Amazon out of all of them. And I do own Amazon. And I think Amazon around 190 to 200 is a buy. So I think you get down another $8. I think I may actually add to my Amazon.
Guess who's coming on the show on Monday that talked about Amazon about a decade ago, and I wish we would have listened to him.
Yeah, God, quizzing me. I hate quizzes.
Well, what about how'd you get through school?
Yes, we've had on the show the last 10 years, hundreds, if not even
who gave
1,000.
Okay. Well, let me think of. He did one of the most famous flips on a stock. He was bearish for a long time and he was wrong. And then the stock came in and he actually flipped to a long on it. And I'll give you the stock, Netflix.
Oh, it's Pachter?
Yeah, Pactor's coming on at 9. And the reason I wanted Pactor to come on is because of this stock here, App
Oh
Lovin'.
yeah. That's gonna be
Yeah,
a great interview because App
yeah.
Lovin has just been punished. The short sellers coming out obviously and beating it up. The stocks went from 500 to 300 in a week. I mean, what a great interview that's going to be. We want to get obviously Michael Pachter's thoughts here. Like I've said, I love Michael Pachter. There's a lot of analysts out there that, just go with the flow, momentum. He is a full, like, he'll make a bold call. He's contrarian at times. He's so well spoken. He's absolutely one of my favorite analysts, Michael Pachter.
Actually, one of the major universities, I think it was Harvard, actually did a case study on his analysis of Netflix about how he was bearish and had his bearish thesis, and then he ended
Yeah.
up with. I didn't read through it yet.
Isn't
Harvard.
that something though that he can actually like, you know, like one of those analysts that actually will change their opinion and say they're wrong and move. Like there's just not a lot of them that do that. There's a lot of them are stubborn. They keep going with the flow. That's not Michael Pachter. That's why we love him.
Okay, all right. We're also going to have Ryan Craver on at 8:35, our regular guest, to talk about the retail sector. Maybe talk about Walmart's decline. Well, it looks like they bought the dip in that, and we're coming up. We still got a lot of major retailers to report. So I don't know. I'm keeping an eye on a lot of things today. One thing I can't get my super bullish hat on until like we take out that pre-market high and establish a strong bid there. Pre-market low 30 handles away. You still got to keep yesterday's low in mind at 73 since we've been holding above that. So that's it. That's an extended pre-market prep here on this Freaky Friday. I hope everyone enjoyed our content today, and you know where to find us Monday morning, 8 a.m. pre-market prep.